So welcome to the 2024 Students Against Destructive Decisions Impact Panel. Thank you. Prior to the Junior Prom each year, SAD has organized a panel of community members as part of our Victims Impact Panel presentation. We have various speakers this morning for you: parents, Woodbury police officers, and a representative from the Orange County Emergency Services Staff DWI. Our goal for you is to recognize the lasting and long-term effects of destructive decisions, including those behind the wheel of a vehicle or even as a passenger in a car. This morning, our speakers will share their stories, describing how their lives and the lives of their families and friends have been impacted by the destructive decisions of others. As you know, I'm an administrator here at Monroe Woodbury High School, the House A assistant principal. Shout out to House A. However, I'm also a mom. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a granddaughter. I'm also an aunt, and I'm a niece. I'm a friend, and I'm an educator. As I wear all of these hats every day, today I ask you that you give your undivided attention and utmost respect for our speakers. To the class of 2025, I ask you to listen to their stories. Really listen to them. Put away your phones and actively listen to their stories. Before I hand this over to Ms. Martucci, please be aware that in the event of an emergency, we have labeled emergency exit doors to both the left and the right of the auditorium, also at the top of the stairs. Please take note of the closest exit, and remember, it may be behind you. Thank you, and I would like to pass the microphone and the event over to Mrs. Martucci, the SAD advisor.
Good morning, class of 2025. As Dr. Sierra mentioned, I'm Mrs. Martucci. I teach 11th grade, but I am also the advisor of SAD, which stands for Students Against Destructive Decisions. Today we are welcoming you to the 2024 Impact Panel presentation. And what we want to just remind you is to remain in your seats until the conclusion of the assembly. As Dr. Sierra mentioned, we have several speakers who have come here today to share stories with you. So please disregard any bells that you may hear. At this time, I want to welcome our current president and vice president of our SAD Club.
Hi, I'm Gianna and I'm president. Our SAD Club is organizing an assembly for our high school juniors each year the day before our Junior Prom. Our goal is for you to recognize the lasting and long-term effects of destructive decisions behind the wheel of a vehicle.
Hi, I'm Gracie. I'm the Vice President of SAD. Today we welcome several speakers who will share their stories as they describe their lives and the lives of their families and friends have been affected by the destructive decisions of others. We would like to thank Ms. Soto, Mr. McElroy, Dr. Sierra, Mr. Krasinski, Mr. Taborski, and the music department, and our custodial staff for assisting us in making this event possible. At this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Cole.
Good morning, class of 2025. I want to talk about my son Alex, and I hope you listen very carefully. This is in his honor. There are two dates that I remember when it comes to my son Alexander. The first one is the day he was born on November 4th. He made me a mom, and I learned what real love was. We moved up here in 1996 when Alex was 14 to give our kids a better life. He loved the Yankees. He was an avid Cowboys fan, just like his dad. His senior class inaugurated this building. He graduated from Monroe Woodbury in 2000. We had our ups and downs. Our relationship was never perfect, but as my son, I loved him unconditionally, and he loved us. The next date is not a day that I celebrate at all. That's September 16th, 2006. That date changed my life and those of my family. Around midnight, I received a knock on my door, and the news I received was the most devastating thing to ever happen to me. I was informed that my son was dead because someone he knew made the decision to get behind the wheel of a car after he had been drinking. And my son, being all of 23 years old, did not think that just driving half a mile down the road would mean his death. He thought he'd be back because when he left the house, he got in the car without his shoes. They never made it back. The driver was killed on impact, and my son was pronounced dead at the same hospital where almost 2 years before his daughter had been born. I could not believe I had heard right. When it finally registered, I screamed and screamed and screamed. I lost my voice and couldn't speak for days. That night I made some of the most difficult phone calls to my family. My husband had just left for a business trip to Arizona, and the time difference made it very difficult to reach him first. I didn't sleep that night. I just got my other 2 children and kept them with me in my bed. Telling a then 12 and 5-year-old that they would never see the older brother they adored was not an easy thing to do. The following days to me are a blur. I don't remember much. I do know that there were over 300 people who came to pay their respects. I know that my daughter Sam was devastated. Several people came up to me and said they had never seen the look on her face. I did not have my youngest, who was 5, John, attend the wake, but he needed to say goodbye to his brother, so I let him come to the funeral. I still have a copy of the eulogy that my husband read at Alex's wake, but the one thing that I do remember from that day, I will never forget the sight of my beautiful firstborn in that casket. This year will be the 18th anniversary of Alex's death, and the pain in my heart and soul has not diminished. Life has gone on without him. I think about him every day. My last thought before going to sleep is about him, and my first thought is about him in the morning. I think my brain knows that he has been gone, but my heart refuses to believe it. At the time of Alex's death, my daughter Sam was a 7th grader, and my son John had just started kindergarten. Sam, class of 2012, has since graduated from Fordham University. She's living in the city and is working as a 2nd grade special education teacher. John, class of 2019, just graduated from SUNY New Paltz and just accepted his first job, and in a couple of weeks he's starting his career at a financial services company in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's the same age now that my son was when he passed. He looks and speaks just like his brother, so much so that I sometimes call him by Alex's name. Alex has missed birthdays, religious celebrations, and many, many special occasions. He will never be older than 23. I go to the cemetery on all those special days and visit with him, and I hope he hears me when I tell him that I miss him desperately. He's not there to see his daughter get older and share her special occasions. She was about to turn 2 when he died. She will be 20 years old this year. She graduated high school last year in 2023 and is making her way in life. She has absolutely no memories of him. Only what I've told her about that, but it isn't enough. He's missed getting her driver's license, he missed her graduation, and many more milestones. His sister, brother, father, daughter, and I have been robbed of a lifetime of memories, all because he got into the car of a drunk driver and he was killed. I relived the night of his death repeatedly. I miss him more and more each day that passes. So please, I ask you as a mother who suffered the most most unimaginable loss any mother can could. Please don't make stupid decisions. It is against the law for you to drink alcohol if you're under 21, but we're not ignorant. We know that some of you will do so, but if you do choose to drink, do not get behind the wheel of a car, and most importantly, don't get in the car of someone you know who has drank. Call your parents. I am sure that they will be pissed off, but I know that they would rather be mad at you than to be woken up in the middle of the night by the police to have to identify your body in the morgue. Please think before you make a decision that can mean your death. Just look at me. I have cried and missed Alex every single day since he was killed almost 18 years ago, and I would never wish that pain on your parents. Yes, I get up every day and continue to live my life with my two wonderful kids and husband, but I have not known peace in my heart since his death. You see me every day as you pass by the main office, always with a smile on my face, and greeting all of you. Have a nice day, but know that every day is a struggle for me to go on. Piece of my heart broke that night, and I will never, ever be the same. Alex's death did not just end there. He died. His journey ended that night. But me and my family have had to live without him for 18 years and more. Parents are not supposed to bury their children. I ask that you enjoy your junior prom. Have a great time. I hear it's going to be really nice. But make the choice to live. Don't condemn your parents to a lifetime of grief because you chose to do something that was not right. And that will end your life and forever change those that love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole, for sharing your story with us.
At this time, I would like to introduce Officer Medina from the Woodbury Police Department, who also recently returned to duty after deployment overseas with the National Guard.
Good morning, everybody. So first, let me introduce myself. Thank you for the SAT officers and Ms. Martucci for having me here today, as well as the school administration. I'm from the Woodbury PD. I've been at the PD for approximately 7 years. Prior to that, I was in the town of Wallkill PD and some time at Federal Corrections. I was a graduate here in Woodbury in 2002, so it's been quite some time here. This building was brand new, so to speak. And then I joined the Guard and Reserves in 2005, again with several deployments. The reason why I'm here today is really present a perspective from the law enforcement. You know, what happens when destructive decisions are made, whether that's through alcohol, drugs, prescription, non-prescription medication, and kind of give you that feel and that process of what you may go through, your friends may go through, and your family might go through. To start with some statistics, from the FBI Uniform Crime Report and NHTSA, the most recent data shows that there were over 10,000 alcohol-related fatalities. That's from the year 2019, that was up on their website. To put that in perspective, there's just slightly over 10,000 residents in the town of Woodbury, right? The town of Woodbury encompassing 35 square miles. So that's if almost every single person that lived in the town of Woodbury was no longer here because of that. And that does not include anything related to sustained lifelong injuries, impact on your family, impact on your friends. So the effects of all that is wide-ranging. In addition, there were over 25,000 arrests for driving under the influence. Now, under the influence can have two categories, right? The first one being a .05, that is driving while ability impaired, and the .08 BAC, which is your driving while intoxicated. So there are multiple thresholds there, and that could also include, again, driving with the use of cannabis, prescription drugs, non-prescription drugs, opiates, anything like that, that could affect how you operate a motor vehicle. And for all of you being high school students under the age of 21, there is a zero tolerance law. So you are not to have any alcohol in operating a motor vehicle, any marijuana operating a motor vehicle. They are working through the state legislation because of a substantial increase over the last few years, where they are looking to reduce that .08 BAC limit down to .05, which is a significant impact. So for somebody of, let's say, my body weight, height, age, you might only look at 2 to 3 beers, go out in the car, and all of a sudden now you have a DWI, because there are a lot of factors that will affect how your body metabolizes the alcohol or the drug, and that's going to affect how you're on the road, time of day, how long you worked. We've seen accidents where just because you're tired, right, your ability to operate those motor vehicles is impaired. Now, from a law enforcement perspective, when we go to the police academy, we spend 6 months, 7 months going through learning vehicle and traffic laws, penal laws, and then we go through how we do SFSTs. SFSTs being our standardized field sobriety tests. These are the standards that are taught nationwide. So whether you're officers from Woodbury, NYPD, LAPD, the standards are the same across the board. With the standardized field sobriety tests, most of the time when we walk up to a car, we're going to get some kind of indication that somebody is impaired, right? There's not any hiding, right? I know you can go on the internet, some people will search, hey, this is how I get around being a little intoxicated, or bring some Listerine, or something like that. Hey, I waited an hour. But honestly, by the time we get up to the car, right, we've either observed some kind of traffic violation, or we have gotten a call from somebody saying, hey, I have somebody swerving all over the road. And we see you go, double the yellow lines, we see it kind of moving in and out too fast. We roll to the car, and we're gonna smell the alcoholic beverages, right? Our first indication. We're gonna be like, all right, this person may have had something to drink, or they're just slurring their words. We're gonna ask you, hey, you know what time it is, where you're coming from, all the kind of leading questions to see what your state of mind is. From there, we're going to pull you out on the road in public, regardless if you're a junior, senior, you're a 30-year-old, person just driving a vehicle from work, and we're going to give you those field sobriety tests. Right? This is going to be implanted with everyone. This is going to be on our cameras. This is going to be documented. We're going to look at your eyes, and we're going to do what's called the Snaggus test. That is the involuntary twitching of your eyes. So generally, that very first test, that HGM test, we're going to know whether you're intoxicated, right? That just takes a small stimulus, a pen, a light. We're going to see your eyes twitch, and you cannot change that. No matter how much you try, no matter how much you try to fake it or move it, we're going to get these clues, and immediately I know, okay, this person has some level of impairment. Whether that's alcohol or marijuana, cannabis, vape pens, whatever the case is, immediately. We will conduct 2 more tests, right? We're going to do the walk and turn test, we're going to do the one-leg stand test, and sometimes you watch videos and it seems funny, but there is a safety aspect to it, right? Because we are doing this on the side of the road, and people could fall in traffic, sometimes they want to fight, and really our biggest concern is the safety of the person we're pulling over, as well as everybody else in the road. Because as officers, that's our primary job, right? We're not, I'm not out there to write a bunch of tickets, right? It's not really what I'm there to do. It's really to protect the community. So being visible, being present, being out on the road, our number one job as law enforcement officers is to ensure the safety of the community. And by being visible, we've reduced traffic accidents and crimes. So pulling you out, doing those SFSTs, right? Once we know you're intoxicated, you're gonna go in handcuffs, right? For juniors, for everyone under 18, while there is some, what they call defensive infancy, for all of you, in terms of certain crimes, vehicle and traffic laws, that does not apply. If you're 16 or 17, which I would assume most of you are, right, you can still be charged as an adult because you're going to the traffic court, right? Now, if there are aggravating offenses on top of that, right, they could transfer you to like a family court, but those DWIs, they're going to stay with you. You're going to go to family court, right? That's going to impact a lot of different things. So first of all, when you go to court, let me backtrack. So once we bring you back to the station, right, we're going to have to call your parents, either on scene or once we get back to the station, because we're going to impound your car, we're going to do a search, we're going to bring you back, mandatory fingerprints, and then we got to release you to custody, right? We got to give you back to your parents or a guardian, right? You're going to get booked, you're going to get fingerprinted, and there are certain cases where that information does get released. So everyone's going to know that, hey, there was a DWI incident, this person did get arrested. That all gets transferred to the court. Now, once you get to the court, you're going to have to pay for those damages, right? A lawyer is going to cost you $5,000 or $10,000. They're not cheap. From there, right, your license is automatically going to be suspended. It'll be a deemed fee hearing. We show up, we give the facts of the case, and then they suspend your license. Because you're under 21, they could revoke your license until you're 21. So all the times that you have the opportunity to go on a weekend, hang out with friends, family, go drive to work, you're going to lose those privileges, right? You're no longer going to be able to have that freedom. If their vehicle is involved in an accident, now you have fees associated with doing impounding the car, taking it in, insurance, your rates are going to go up, your parents' rates are going to go up. The court case itself could take anywhere from 6 months to a year. There are times where I have a case held over for an infinite amount of time, right? Like I'll show up 1 month, 2 months later, give a deposition, go on to the next one, and then 2 months later, we're still there, still adjudicating that case. It's a slow process that is just going to hang over you. If convicted, that's going to go on your record. Every time we pull you over, every time anything comes up, we pull your driver abstract, it's going to show up. It's going to show what you got arrested for. It's going to show what the disposition of the case was when it was completed. At the court, it's going to show, you might have to disclose it to your job applications. You might have to go and give it to your college applications, right? Because it will be, at a minimum, a misdemeanor. So that will carry with you for the rest of your life. So this impact is not just, a momentary thing. It's a lifelong impact. With that being said, that doesn't take into account everything else that goes on with the DWI, with the accident possibly, right? There are times where you have a buddy that's in the car, now somebody have to call their parents. I've seen it destroy friendships and families because you put somebody that was trusted in a vehicle and you put them in a bad situation. So lifelong friends lost. And then it leads down to just a bad road. Being, a graduate from 2002, right? A lot of my peers that went to school, we've seen them where they started and kind of where they ended. And for some of them, they aren't here right now, right? Because they started making those decisions, started drinking early, started doing drugs and narcotics, and then all of a sudden, they're addicted or they're just drinking too much. And, there was somebody that, lived in town, graduated together, and when they went to his house for a call, his room was filled with beer bottles, alcohol bottles, and he literally drank himself to death, right? And that's how they found him. And it's a horrible way to go. I know one particular scene here that I responded to. It was around Christmas time a few years ago. We got a call. I was working at midnight, so like probably 2 or 3 a.m. Two guys, they were in the Army together. One had gotten out, one was still in. He decided to visit his buddy up here for kind of like their winter break. Took some vacation time. They went out to the bar, started drinking. They thought they could drive home safely because they only had to go a few miles, right? Stay at his buddy's house. Well, most accidents happen within 5 miles of your home. He was going north on 32. He crossed over the double yellow line, and he went into an 18-wheeler fuel truck, right? So imagine an 18-wheeler fuel truck going 45 miles an hour, filled, and his car goes directly at it. Nothing to avoid. They did strike each other, 2 vehicles. First one on scene, right? We gotta make sure the scene is safe, there's fuel on the ground. I have a vehicle that I can see is very badly damaged. Go up to the passenger side, immediately, just based on training, I know that that passenger was no longer alive. Immediately. Like those things you cannot unsee, right? So that is an immediate impact to the officers on scene, the family members. Went to the driver's side. He was barely alive, but I couldn't get to him, right? I had to call the fire department, additional units. I had to wake up other officers to get them to help out with traffic. We had to go to the fire department to get the jaws of life, get that person out, and then take him to the hospital. So after that, we have to start making calls to your families. We have to go there and say, hey, your son or daughter is no longer alive. He or she was involved in an accident, right? Somebody that was out there on active duty leave, gone. His friend, right? The impact it's going to have on him, his family. They just closed this case, I think, right before I left. I think he got between like 5 and 8 years jail. So, I mean, the impact it's going to have on the community, them, their family is uncalculable, right? That kind of goes on forever. The officers, they constantly have to deal with stuff like that. At the end of the day, think about the impact you want to have. Think about, what decisions you're going to make. It's a lot easier nowadays to, not saying it's good to drink. It's definitely not at your age, but call an Uber, call a friend, call a Lyft, a Bolt, right? There's ample opportunities to get home safe, right? So that I don't have to show up at your scene. I don't have to call your family. You don't have to hear from a friend, right? Showing back up at school after an incident like that. News travels fast, right? It's just going to put you down a bad path. So, from a law enforcement perspective, please, listen to our speakers here, the impact, what's happened to them. Think about what you're going to do. Make those good decisions. Hopefully, you have a great rest of your junior year and senior year. Go on to great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Medina, for coming here today. At this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Sabina, who is the program educator at Orange County Stop DWI.
So good morning. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, and I don't want to reiterate anything anybody said and repeat some stuff, but I'm here as the Stop DWI program, so all of those arrests that Officer Medina and the law enforcement officers in this county go out and do, that fine money comes back into my program, and we go out and do things like this. We want to educate and prevent the not one more. We want to prevent the not one more of you not making it to prom, not making it to graduation. We want to make sure you see all the milestones that you're supposed to see. Coming up next weekend is Memorial Day weekend, and from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we call that the 100 deadliest days. That means people in your age bracket, 16 to 24, they have higher chances of being involved in a motor vehicle crash. So like I said, we don't want any empty chairs at prom or graduation. We want to make sure that you get there safely. Mr. Stromer, the speaker you're about to hear, isn't here to tell you what you can and cannot do, what you should or shouldn't do. He's just going to share his story and hope that it resonates with you and you make better choices when you're faced with certain peer pressure situations. Trust me, we know the situations you are going to be put in. If you haven't already, they will be coming up soon. And we want you to be prepared to make the right decision and the safest decision you can. I promise you, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your caregivers, whoever you live with, would rather get a phone call at midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning for them to come get you than to have someone like Officer Medina knock on their door and tell your parents or your caregiver that you're not coming home. You never want to put your parents in the shoes of Mr. Stromer because he lives with that every single day. Parents aren't supposed to bury their children. And unfortunately, Brian has lived with that for a long time now, so I promise you never want to put your parents in his shoes. I ask that you be respectful and listen to his story. Ask him questions if they come up. He's an open book, he will answer them. And trust me, you're going to relate to his story more than you can imagine. So I ask that you listen, have an open mind, and be respectful. Does that make sense? Okay, so without further ado, Mr. Brian Stromer.
Good morning. I'm sorry for my tardiness. I'm not late, I was just detained elsewhere. As Lauren said, my name is Brian Stromer. I'm going to tell you a story about my family, in particular my son Brian, my namesake. Labor Day 2010, he went out with his friends. He drank, he got high, he got into a vehicle, he crashed and died. He's not here to tell the story I am. It was a selfish move. It was a senseless move and a risk that wasn't worth taking. So I'll kind of roll through some pictures and introduce you to my family and Brian and tell the story, okay? So a little bit about myself. After high school, I graduated from Washington in 1981, so I'm an old guy. After high school, after the Navy, and I lived all over the country, and I've got 4 children. My oldest is 40, my youngest is a senior at Washington. So I have 2 generations of kids, which has kind of been interesting, right? When I grew up, we didn't have cable TV, we had antennas, we had 4 or 5 stations that we watched TV. It was network TV. Brian and Brandy, who are 40 and Brian will be 36 now, they were watching cable, Cartoon Network, Comedy Central, never watched network TV. And now I have 2 younger, Owen and Kira, they're 19 and 18, and they don't watch live TV at all. They stream everything. Been interesting to watch the technological advances. So after the Navy, I started a career with the FBI, retired from the FBI, and I did this kind of thing for New York State and the National Safety Council full time. COVID hit, all presentations stopped. I went back to the federal government, and I've actually got 40 years of federal service now. I've worked with the VA, I've worked with the Army Corps of Engineers, and now I'm up with the U.S. Mint at West Point. So that's a little bit about me. Here's a picture of myself and Brian. This is in Hawaii. It was a promotion ceremony. We celebrated everything together, my family. Small things, big things, we celebrated them all. Success was something we always wanted to encourage and acknowledge. Here's my family left to right, myself. Owen, who is finishing his sophomore year at URI, being held by Brian, who is 21 at the time. Kira, who's the senior at Washington, is being held by my daughter, who's now 40, and then my wife, Shannon. Can I take this off? So November was a cool month. 3 of the kids were born in November, and Owen early, November 3rd, and then Brian was the 24th and Brady the 29th. And typically, I took the weekend of Thanksgiving off because generally the 24th falls before Thanksgiving, not always, but generally. And then we'd have Brian's birthday, Thanksgiving, and then we'd end the week off on Brandy's birthday. And Thanksgiving's really one of my favorite holidays. 3 of my favorite things: football, food, and family. You know, there's no gift giving, there's none of that. It's just eat, watch football, enjoy one another. That's a little different now. We still celebrate. We still celebrate everything. We have not changed that piece, but it's all different now. Because Brian's no longer a part of that. And this is based on the decision he made, a selfish decision that he chose. And the consequences are for me. So this picture, Owen and Kira, the youngest 2, are up front. This is Owen graduating from pre-K, and my father is holding them. Far left is my wife, then my mother, Brandy, my oldest. My father-in-law in the back, my mother-in-law with the white shirt. Brian is in the back with the hat, and you're going to see Brian looks different in a lot of the pictures. He was like a chameleon. I never knew what he was going to look like. He had big gauges in his ears. He had long hair. He had short hair. He was a pain in the neck. And then myself behind Owen. So on the left is Brian and Brandy. On the right is Brian, Brandy, Owen, and Kira. This was our last Thanksgiving together. This was, so on the left, Brian is holding Owen. Brandy is holding my niece, Davin. And my niece, Caitlin, is holding Kira. On the right, Brian is holding Owen. It was a family event, and behind him is his best friend, Dylan. So Brian had some cool experiences. He lived in a lot of cool spots, which I was born and raised in South Blooming Grove. I went to high school from 68 to 81 in this, I was in the same house. Brian lived in San Diego, San Francisco, Hawaii, Jacksonville, Florida, and New York. And he complained, he didn't like it. I often wonder if that attributed to his decision-making, which, when you're serving on active duty, you think you're doing the right thing, and you're doing it for the right reason, and it's, you're setting a good example. To move somebody 6 or 7 times at a school age is tough on the people. It's tough on the kids, right? And how that affects them is different with each kid. This is one of Brian's experiences. This is the old Meadowlands Stadium. He is at the coin toss. It was the Giants against Cincinnati. He's on the big screen there. He's in the center of the field getting ready to toss the coin. The most aggravating piece of this picture is Brian was a Cowboy fan. It was my first failure as a father, I thought. I throw this picture in because they're both gone. You guys weren't even born when the towers were up. I remember when they were finished. Neither one are here, and I add that just for posterity. A family wedding. On the left side are cousins, and then Brandy and Brian are on the right side of the picture. On the very right is my cousin Danielle and Brian. Again, he looks a little different in each picture. My brothers and nephews and my niece at her christening. So my oldest brother Jerry on the left, my brother Kevin to his left, my nephew Danny in the back, my father next to him, I'm down in front of my father, Brian is far right, and then my niece Davin. Brian was a gift. Brian made bad choices. Brian did a bad thing. Brian was not a bad kid. Every one of you are going to be faced with the same decision he made, and you got to make the right one. Great brother. So, Kira, she struggles with this presentation. I do it a lot. And not too long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Lauren, right? She said to me, I don't remember Brian. And I shared that at one of the presentations, and she got very upset because she felt like she was being disloyal to him. But that's reality. Kids, they get through things differently, and they hold their memories close, but she didn't remember his voice. She didn't remember how he acted. She just remembered bits and pieces of him. Now, how many of you have siblings? I want you to think for a minute, them not being able to remember you. Because that's the possibility. Brian, so I told you 3 of the kids were November babies. Brian was one of them. We held Brian till he was almost 6 when he went to school. The others all went early. So he turned 18 in high school, and he came home to me sometime middle of October of his senior year, and he said, Dad, when I turn 18, I'm going to get a tattoo. I said, oh yeah? No, you're not. How many of you guys plan on getting tattoos? It's very popular, right? I spent 22 years in the Navy. I don't have a tattoo. This kid's loaded. So he says to me, yeah, Dad, I'm not really asking. I'm going to be 18. I'm going to be an adult. I'm telling you I'm going to get a tattoo. I said, oh, you are? You're an adult? Feed yourself. He's like, what? I said, feed yourself. Pay your rent. I live here. I don't pay rent. I'm like, that's what adults do. But he was charming, and he comes home on his 18th birthday with this tattoo. Does he have a pointer on it? No. So this tattoo right here, it's hard to see, but it's a Navy cutter. And he said to me, I said, Brian, I told you not to get a tattoo. He said, Dad, it's in dedication to your service. I said, my service? I was in the Navy for 22 years. That's a sailboat. He's very charming. He knew how to get his way, he knew how to talk to people, was very witty. I missed that about him. Again, he made a poor choice, it cost him his life, and every one of you are going to be faced with this decision. One of my favorite pictures, because he's in a suit. Brian typically was in a pair of skate shoes, jeans, and a t-shirt. He was he was an extreme sports guy. He loved skateboarding, he loved snowboarding. And here he was in a suit. And this was the wedding, the last wedding we attended all together. Here's a picture of Owen on the left up at URI, and here's Kira on the right. Kira, just by the way, she's a nervous wreck right now. We're leaving for JFK in about 2 hours. She's going to see Taylor Swift in Sweden on Sunday. So she's flying into Paris tomorrow morning and then over to Stockholm tomorrow afternoon. She's a nervous wreck. I'm excited for her, and I'm sure it'll all go well. I'll tell you what I did do though. I called my entire FBI contact list in Stockholm and said, hey, my daughter's going to be in country. So I have all their numbers. So Brian was a really gifted musician, and he actually was very talented mechanically. If he could touch it, he could fix it, he could figure out how to play it. He played guitar, piano, and drums. I don't know how well he sang. Looking at the picture on the left, I don't know, he looks like he's screaming. So I don't know, I never did have the opportunity to see him play, which I'm sorry about, or at least in this particular band. Just another picture of him playing drums. One of the cars he worked on, he worked at Woodcock Mountain Auto, which is in Washingtonville off Woodcock Mountain Road. Not his car, but a car he worked on, was very proud of. And these are the people who worked with him. Here, this woman with the sunglasses is holding a picture of a crystal teardrop with Brian's picture in it. And it's on the counter at Woodcock to this day. Now remember, he died, he was killed 14 years ago in a crash. And he still exists with them. The t-shirt says, so he had an orange Subaru, WRX, and has the Subaru logo, and his name, and I think Woodcock Auto on the back. But that was the color of his car. Brian drove fast, and I used to say to him, so he comes home one day and the car is painted this color, it's bright orange. And I'm like, Brian, why did you do that? You know, the stock color on his Subaru I thought was very nice. It was like a silver, gray, very nice. But he gets it this bright orange. I said, why did you do that? You drive into Washingtonville, and your bright orange car, they see you coming 1.5 miles away, and you're always speeding. Now, the insurance company, they predicted his death. So about 4 months before Brian was killed, I got a letter from the insurance company saying the rider on your house, which is, I had $1 million rider because I have a swimming pool and a trampoline. I was afraid somebody might get hurt. And I added insurance, so a rider is an additional policy to the house. They canceled that $1 million policy because Brian lived with me. When I called them, I said, what the hell are you doing? And they said, listen, this kid is going to hurt somebody. or himself. They predicted it. So here's a picture of Brian's best friend Dylan. He was in an earlier shot. Look at the face there. What do you see in the eyes? So I remember a particular morning. I was doing the laundry. My wife worked in Yonkers. I worked in Lower Manhattan. So our deal was, if we're going to live in Orange County, we're splitting the house chores. My chore was laundry. In the laundry one day, I found a pipe and some rolling papers. And I went into his room and I said to him, "Ryan, are you smoking dope?" What do you think he said? "It's weed, Dad." "Yeah, I get high, it's no big deal." "Oh yeah?" He was under the influence and it killed him. Listen, I don't care whether weed is legal, because alcohol is legal. But you take any substance, you ingest any substance that alters your ability to operate a 2,000-pound vehicle, and that vehicle becomes a weapon. If you're gonna get high, don't drive. It's that simple. If you're gonna drink, don't drive. It is that simple. Brian is his favorite uncle. Now, I mentioned to you that favorite picture of mine where Brian was in a suit. That is also what I delivered to the funeral home. He was waked at Smith Seaman and Quackenbush in Monroe. And the owner, Tommy at the time, called me and he said, "Hey, listen, this suit is not going to work." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, you got to get me something else to put it in. The suit's not going to work." I said, "Well, that's what I wanted." And he said, "Brian, it's not going to work." And I said, "Tommy, that's what I wanted." And then he had to explain, because I wasn't listening. When Brian was ejected from the car and broke his neck. His neck was 3 times its normal size, and he couldn't wear a suit and hide the fact that he had a broken neck. So I gave him this sweatshirt, and they put the hood around his head and zipped it up to his chin and sort of had his head down and hid the fact that his neck was 3 times its normal size. In hindsight, I wish I would have just had a closed casket, because it didn't look like him. But, you know, in my family, we waked, and it was generally an open casket, and I just reacted to the way I was raised. And I'm sorry I did that, because it did not look like him. 2 of my favorite guys, my father and my son. So I mentioned Kira not remembering her brother, and I understood, because 20 years, almost to the day, and 3 miles from where Brian crashed, my younger brother had the same fate. He was in a car, traveling at a high speed, under the influence, lost control of his car and died. So my father knew what the next year had in for me. And my father was very sick when Brian was killed. And I thought when the police came to the door to inform me that Brian was dead, I thought they were coming to tell me that it was my father. And then I wished it was that. Because it was crippling. It's exactly the way people portray it on TV, the knock on the door, it's late at night, and you're like, who can that be? And you open the door and you see 2 police officers, and you know it's bad news. This is my younger brother Danny holding my son Brian. Danny died in October 1990, September of 1990, and Brian died in September of 2010. So Brian and his girlfriend, Therese. Therese teaches in Westchester now. She's married, she has 3 kids. Loved having her around. Great influence on Brian. I remember her bringing her schoolwork to the house, her college work to the house when she was doing her student teaching and prepping for teaching and sitting at the kitchen table and watching them, and I thought there was a future there. We loved having Therese around. So I refer to this as Brian's signature look simply because it was the last picture I ever took. This was August of 1990. It was my niece's first birthday party. Kind guy. Bad decision. Bad result. Not a bad guy. This is his graduation picture. So here's the car, and this is Labor Day weekend. The picture you're looking at is Route 208 heading into Washingtonville. That was the direction the car was going, but it ended up hitting a stanchion, hitting a tree, flipping, and then ended up heading in the wrong direction. So I've told you, Brian was high, he was drinking, his blood alcohol level was 0.15, which is twice the legal limit, and got into this vehicle. What I didn't tell you is that he wasn't driving, he was a passenger. Everyone in this room is going to be faced with this decision to get into a car with somebody who is in better shape than them, perhaps, or who you trust and you think has your best interest. Brian was killed by his best friend. There were 3 people in the car. Brian was in the back seat. He was ejected. John Blaine was in the passenger seat. It was his 21st birthday they were out celebrating. You could see the passenger side was totally wrecked. And Dylan, his best friend, got out of the car and was like, what happened? John Blaine, who was a union iron worker in Manhattan, his whole left side, he had 9 surgeries. Brian was ejected and killed immediately. A Walden man is arrested after a car accident leaves a 22-year-old dead. The crash happened just before 2 a.m. Saturday on 208 in the town of Bloomingdale. This was the headline in the Record on Sunday morning. So Friday night into Saturday is when it happened. This is what the Record said on Sunday. So here I am 17 months later in court speaking to the judge. I know my way around a courtroom. I'm comfortable dealing with judicial figures. I'm comfortable dealing with law enforcement officials. And I'm telling the judge 2 things. So my oldest, Brandy, calls me around Halloween of 2010. So about 6 weeks after Brian is killed by his best friend, who was also under the influence of alcohol and marijuana, and he's on MySpace, which was the platform at the time that the kids were using, posting pictures of himself drinking and getting high in a Spider-Man outfit. Can you do me a favor and wake her up, please? Thank you. So 17 months later, I'm I'm explaining to the judge how this incident happened, and my daughter calls me saying, "Dad, you can't believe what's going on. He's posted this stuff." And I said, "Ray, what do you want me to do?" Now, Dylan was at my house all the time. I didn't particularly care for him. I did bail him out when this happened, instinctively, for no other reason than because I thought that's what Brian would have wanted. And I decided to call him, and I said to him, "Dylan, what are you doing?" And he said to me, "Mr. Stromer, I have two options," and that's what I'm sharing with the judge here. These pictures were taken off the Times Herald website. He said, "I killed Brian, and I know that there's going to be problems. I know I'm in trouble. So my thought is I should enjoy while I can." I said, "Well, what's your other option?" He said, "Do something positive with it." And I said, "Dylan, if you chose that, I'd do it with you." So imagine having Dylan tell you about killing his best friend rather than Brian's fat old dad. Dylan could be up here telling this story, and he should be. But he chose to continue to get high and drink for that 17 months from the time he killed his best friend until he went to trial. He pled to aggravated vehicular homicide, convicted of murder. He pled to it. So this is Brandy, and I was standing behind her. She's making a victim impact statement to the judge. And she's standing there holding her heart, and I'm watching this completely powerless, listening to her tell the judge, "Dylan didn't just kill Brian, he killed my entire family." Now, I know that's not true. But as parents, we can't take that pain away from our kids. All we can do is be there and do what we can do. But it was painful to watch that, because she was wrong. Dylan and she were good friends. He would not look at her. He would not look at her. So John Blaine, he's on the left. On the right picture, he's on the left side. Brian in the middle, Dylan on the right. John Blaine on the left. On the left picture, Brian's got a white t-shirt in the back. Dylan's singing something. I don't know who the guy with the black t-shirt is. Dylan was a fixture in my home. He was welcome. I didn't care for him, but I trusted my kid. He ate my food. He drank my beer. He parked in my spot, and I let that be, because he was my son's friend. So this is the most surreal piece of all this. We get done with our piece of the victim impact, the gavel hits, he's sentenced to 40 years to 12 in the state penitentiary. The court officers walk up on him, shackle him, take the necktie off because they don't want him to commit suicide while he's in holding, and escort him out. Took 45 seconds. It was surreal. And I'll tell you, I left feeling sort of empty because I didn't get anything I wanted. And as I walked into the elevator to go down, I was with my oldest daughter, just kind of numb and following people. I get into the elevator, and Dylan's mom is there, and she says to me, "Are you happy now?" Because I was pretty powerful in what I had to say to the judge. And I thought, what? Am I happy? So the way I look at it is, John Blaine got a life sentence because at the time, he was in a lifetime of pain. Brian got a death sentence, he's dead. And Dylan got sentenced 4 to 12. He really made out the best. But kids, let me tell you, that's what mama bears do. They gotta look out for you, no matter what. So I wasn't really mad at her. I was mad at the situation. My daughter was extremely agitated. I had to pull her by the collar and say, easy, no winners here. So you don't know me. This is a picture after all this happened, and that is a different family. We are bruised and battered, but not broken. But it's a different family in that picture. And something that people don't realize, when you lose somebody, the trickle-down effect is much larger than you realize. We lost Therese, who was, in my opinion, Brian's future. We lost any children they would have had. Therese lost a boyfriend. The kids lost a sister-in-law. I lost a daughter-in-law. There's a lot of loss in this. There's a lot of ripple effects that are not considered. And it was a selfish choice. So that's Kira, Therese, and Owen. And then in the far right picture, Therese ran into Owen. Owen works in Goshen at a restaurant. And she texted me, she said, "Is this Owen?" I said, "Yeah, it is." And they took a picture and sent it to me. Bless you. So here's the ripple effect. I mentioned John Blaine. So he went through 9 surgeries. He was on pain medicine, oxy for years. And then they took him off the oxy. He was still in pain. What do you think he did? He migrated to heroin. 5 years ago, December 23rd, almost Christmas Eve, he OD'd and died. Second death directly attributed to this crash. 3 good friends, 2 of them are dead. 1 went to prison. All over foolishness, bad choices. Every one of them made a bad choice, every single one of them. The odds of this happening to somebody here are low, that you're going to die or get killed. However, the odds of you knowing somebody over this next 100 days that is affected by a substance-related crash is higher than you think. Laura referred to it earlier, but you're going to know somebody or be directly affected by somebody over this next 100 days, statistically. Drive sober. If you're drinking, do not drive. If you're getting high, don't drive. The designated driver is not the most sober. They are sober, period. They are not the least high. They are clean. No drugs, no alcohol. And damn it, wear a seatbelt. Brian was in the back seat and didn't wear a seatbelt. You saw that car. If he was in the center of the car or even behind the driver, it is possible he's alive today. Two takeaways. Remember to be aware. Be aware of who you're with, what their loyalties are to you. Do they really care about you? Know what they're doing, what they're using. And beware. I'm not judging you. You didn't hear me say, don't, except don't drive. I'm not judging you, but New York State will. They'll do 4 to 12 years, and you will be held accountable. Brian couldn't donate his organs, so I do this in hopes of getting through to somebody, anybody, just one of you. If one of you makes the right decision, I feel like it's success. You do not want to be the picture on the back of a t-shirt. And you don't want to be Brian. Questions? I know you got a lot going on and you want me off the stage and I'll get out of your hair, but any questions? Any questions? Go ahead. What happened to Dylan? Good question. So he did, in New York, the 4 to 8 or the 4 to 12, there's a statutory limit. He did 8 1/3 years. He was released. I agreed to see him, and he never apologized for what he did. Here's another piece I didn't tell you about Dylan. He was dating my niece. Brian called my niece that night at midnight, at 10 o'clock, and said, hey, can you pick us up? He knew, Brian knew. And she said, I'll be there at midnight. And he said, no, 2 o'clock. They're at Bourbon Street, Monroe. And she said, I can't, I have to work tomorrow. I'll be there at noon. He said, don't worry about it. A deadly decision. I do not. I have no interest in him. Didn't like him. He confirmed everything I believed about him when I met him after his sentencing. Never said the right thing to me. And nothing's going to bring Brian back, so I'm very open to hearing. And listen, I was 18 once. I was 21 once. I did foolish things. I know he did not set out to kill him, but he did kill him. He went ahead and got high and drank for 17 months after, and then every time he paroled, he blamed my niece for not picking them up. I have zero respect for that man. Any other questions? Okay, guys, it's a great time in your life. Enjoy. I'm really happy for you. Make good choices and be safe. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Strummer, for participating in the assembly today. Our hope is that you leave today with a sense of empathy and understanding for how destructive decisions affect many lives, not just our own.
If we change our thinking and behavior, we can prevent future tragedies. Have a great prom weekend, everyone.